Alright, welcome back to the channel. So we are going to put the cam caps and cams on today, so enjoy. Hope this helps you out. So we're gonna go ahead and put the rockers assembly back on, cams on, and then the cam caps. I got the cams right here wrapped up. We're gonna go ahead and set them on this. So let's get into this and get it started. Alright, so before you do your cams, your cam caps and all that, go ahead and rotate it this way about 180 or about that far down. You don't want your to be top dead center when you're doing these. Okay, so just go ahead and take that and rotate it over a little bit, and then start putting your cams, rockers, and cam caps on. So I got it on. Like I said, you're basically gonna match these dowel pins. They're on here. They're on the the caps right here. On here. Use a rubber mallet to bang it down. These will give you a little bit of problems trying to get in. When they slide on the rockers, you want to make sure they're up a little bit, because there's a little lip on a rocker that touches the lost motion spring. It'll snag on it, but other than that, it goes on pretty good. I did go ahead and trim up my zip ties a little bit because they were getting in the way, so little note to yourself. But as you can tell, it's on. And like I said, this one right here came off. I'm gonna double check it and make sure the pins are in there. Basically, one side of the rocker will have a pin with a spring. This middle one will have a pin inside of it, and this one will have a pin right here. Just if they come loose like this, just double check to make sure you got the pin with the fucking spring and the other two pins right here. It's not the end of the world, but just make sure. I am going to go ahead. You want to make sure your sensors are on the flywheel side, and they are numbered. The caps are 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 1 will always be near your timing side, and 5 will always be near your training side. So remember that. Same thing when you put the cams on and you put the top caps on, they will be numbered 2. I think the caps actually have arrows on which direction they need to go. But so those are on. Not too big of a problem. The biggest issue is just making sure that these rockers, you know, don't get snagged up on the lost motion springs. I will go ahead. Let me see. I will go ahead and I'm gonna go ahead and double check everything, make sure all my pins are in, all my springs are in, and then I will go ahead and put the cams on. So let me go ahead and just double check everything on your rockers. Make sure everything is, you know, seating right. You're basically looking for, these are supposed to be touching the tops of your springs, your valves. That's what pushes your valves down. I will go ahead and double check to make sure all my lost motion springs in there. I'm just going to do a quick double, triple, quadruple check to make sure everything's there before I start my next step. So go ahead and do that, and let's move on. If you do end up getting a situation where the pin's sticking out, just use a little flathead screwdriver and push it in as you're moving it down. Oh shit, sorry. And it'll all line up. Pretty easy. So I went ahead and cut all the zip ties. I'm just going to go through and check them, all of them. Basically, I'll lift it up a little bit, and then you'll basically see on the side, you'll see the pins. And I'm just going to go ahead and double check everything and make sure all these pins are in here before I move on. You want to double check all this shit. Just make sure, you know, won't hurt. Take the time. Make sure all these pins are in here. Alright, so I went and double checked everything. Pins all look good. Again, look for your lost motion springs. Make sure they're in there. As you can see, the lost motion spring is hitting that rocker little arm. Just make sure all these right here are touching your valves, and just go by and double check everything. You know what I mean? Easy. Better to triple double check than to put this bitch in and you have to rebuild it again. So just check your work. Everybody fucks up, and this is the shit you don't really want to fuck up on. Try not to. Alright, so that is that. We're going to go ahead and move on to putting the cams on. and then the top cam caps. We'll go ahead and do that, and then we'll go ahead and torque everything down. And there's a pattern for that and all that shit. So let's go ahead and jump into that. So I got some assembly lube. I'm going to be using red lime assembly lube. I'm going to lube up basically these cam caps. You don't have to be too gentle with it. I'm going to basically grease these up, put a little bit here, just grease all this or lube it all up. And then I'm going to put the cams on, and then put some top on the top of the cams. Basically, so when you do your first startup, you're not getting metal to metal contact. You got some type of lubrication to keep everything lubed, so you're not getting metal on metal. But yeah, so go ahead and just put some assembly lube. I'll show you where I'm gonna put everything. Here's the cams. This will be your intake side, the one with the bolts, and this will be your exhaust side. We'll go ahead and I will drop those in. I will go ahead and put some assembly lube, like I said, right here on this area. And then just right here, and then just run a quick bead over this. It won't hurt it. Lube it up. Alright, so I went ahead and lubed it up a little bit. So I got some assembly lube on it, and then now we're gonna go ahead and put these cams on real quick. Alright, so when you put these cams in, you're basically just gonna set them down and then roll them, or not roll them, but get them to where they feel like they sit flat. You know, like they fit in there like they're supposed to be. You'll tell. You'll know the difference when you do it. So just make sure that, you know, when you do them, just kind of roll it around until you feel it just sit in and sit flat, and then you should be all right. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and do these cam caps real quick. All right, so I went ahead and put some assembly lube on top of the cams. That way when I put the top cam caps on, like I said, it'll keep everything lubed up on the first startup. So I'm going to go ahead and put these cam caps on and just do them hand tight. Like I said, they are numbered 1, 2, 3, etc. And they do have arrows, and the arrows will point towards your transmission. Okay. When I took these out, I kept them in the position that they came out of. That way I don't get them mixed up. Good idea to do that. So I'm gonna go ahead and probably start with one. I'm gonna go ahead and give them a wipe down real quick because they've been sitting here for a minute. But I'm gonna go ahead and start with number 1, and then we'll move all the way back to number 5. Alright, I apologize, I did give you the wrong information. Yes, 1 will start up here by the cams, cam gears, and then the arrow will be pointing this way. So you're going from, the arrow should be pointing towards your timing chain cover. My bad. So yeah, so go ahead and make sure the arrow's pointing towards the cams or the timing chain area, and then that goes on right there. I'm basically going to run, I think we need to keep these 2 off for now because this will be the upper timing chain guide. I have to double check, but I'm pretty sure it is for the upper timing chain guide. So you're going to leave those 2 off right now, and then start putting these on, and then just bam, 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 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and put all those on hand tight, and then we'll go into the torque specs after that. Alright, I'll go ahead and give you guys this just in case you guys are jumping back into your motor like months later and your bolts were all mixed up. You're basically going to put the 2 regular bolts in the front, and then you're going to use these ones with the top parts up here for the timing chain guide, or the guide and the whatever, I think the valve cover maybe. Anyways, and then these 2 will go in the middle. So let's go ahead and do that. Alright, cam caps are on. As you notice, they're not flush. They're not going to be flush. As you start putting the bolts in and start hand tightening them, they will eventually go flush. And the reason they're not going to go flush, it looks like this, is because these rockers are basically, you know, spring loaded, so it's pushing up on these cams a little bit. So that's why it's gonna look like that. So no matter what, just leave it as is. Just when you start tightening, like I said, take all the bolts and put them in, you know, snug, should I say, before, you know, right before you start torquing, or hand tight, whatever, snug. And then yeah, and then these will start to, the gaps will start to close. And as you're doing that, just keep an eye on it, make sure those dowel pins are lined up right and all that. But that's why that looks like that, is because these cams have pressure pushed on them from the rockers, so that's going to look like that. So don't go beating on this shit thinking it needs to go flush. It will go flush. Alright. Alright, before you start going to put the rockers on and stuff like that, make sure this piece right here is doing like that. Same with the other one, or you won't be able to drop that top bolt down to thread. I did have to pull it back off and rotate this. I basically just put a towel on it and just took some pliers and turned it. It turns really easy. Go ahead and take a rubber mallet and pop them in a little bit too. Make sure this groove lines up. This groove was actually pointed up, so when I tried to put the top caps on, the bolt wasn't going down, and that was why. So just make sure you do that. It'll save you the hassle of having to pull the stuff back off just to turn that little piece. But just make sure that's all lined up. Alright, there. My mistakes helps you out. Just make sure. Alright, so the cam caps are on with the bolts hand tight. Now I will go ahead and there'll be a picture right now of showing the sequence and torque specs that you need to get these down. So go ahead and follow that. Alright, so here are the torque specs. The 8mm bolts are at 16 pounds. The 6mm bolts are at 8 pounds. As you can tell, it gives you numbers 6. The 6mm bolts are 21, 22, and 23, which basically is going to be the center one, and these two outside ones are the only ones you're torquing down to 8, but all the rest will be 16 pounds. So don't forget those two on the end. They go right here. So go ahead and torque these down to the torque specs, and that is pretty much it for putting all the cams and stuff back in. And now after I do that, we're gonna go ahead and do the valve lash. Since we got this open, might as well get it done and get it over with. It'd be easier to do it now than later. So let's go ahead and torque these up. You don't have to torque these two down. This is where your upper timing chain guide is gonna go, so you can go ahead and skip those until we start doing the timing. So I'll just go ahead and skip over to these ones on the ends. So don't tighten these up because you're going to have to take them back off and put the timing chain guide on there anyways. Alright, so these are all torqued down except for these last two because we'll have to use the timing guide like I said. So that is pretty much it for doing that, for getting the cams in, rockers in, and cam caps in. Pretty straightforward. Basically with these nipples sticking up right here, these are for your valve cover to be tightened onto. So if you have any doubts, take your valve cover and look, and you can match these holes up with the valve cover. But you can also go back to the picture I posted up, and that should give you the layout for everything you need to. Alright, so I think I'm done. So that takes care of the rockers, cams, cam caps, and valve lash. Next video will be timing chain stuff, to put all the timing chain stuff back on. So I hope this helped you guys out. I'm probably going to go take a break for a minute and then come back down later and start the timing chain video. So hopefully this everything works out when I start it up, of course. Hopefully, you know, cross fingers. Nah. But anyways, so that's it. Hope you guys liked the video. Hope it helped you guys out. Like, subscribe, and KLD, and I'll catch you on the next one.